Alright. Oh, I'm kind of matching today. Unintentional. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I just want to apologise straight off for the lighting in this video. The clouds are coming in, there's about to be a thunderstorm, so I know that I look really red and this lighting looks really gloomy, so I'm really sorry about that. Nothing I can do about it, but I thought I'd get this quick video in before it starts pouring with rain. So welcome back to my channel. I'm going to do a little casual video about the cultural differences in Singapore compared to my home country in the UK. Now, I have done a video similar to this previously where I mentioned a few different cultural differences. I will link the video up in the iCard so you can go check it out if you haven't seen it already. Because there's so many cultural differences, I wanted to talk about some more in this video, so that's what we're going to do today. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get started. Singapore is such a safe country to live in. Now, in the UK, you would always kind of be cautious and maybe on edge sometimes. Say I'd be walking home from the train station late at night by myself, I'd always kind of be watching my back, or I would choose not to do it. Like sometimes I would rather get a taxi than walk home at night because I didn't feel very safe. Sometimes you would make sure that you were with a group of friends or with a guy rather than being by yourself. And as well as not feeling safe, people would get jumped a lot, people get mugged a lot, get their things stolen, and in Singapore it just doesn't happen. I mean, I'm sure it does happen every now and then, but I've never experienced it, and I've never heard anyone tell me that they've experienced it either. When you lose like a phone or a wallet here, or you leave in a restaurant, there's like 99% chance that you're gonna get it back, which is amazing. Like someone will hand it in for you, or it will just literally still be there when you go back to the restaurant, which is crazy because if I was back home, chances are it would have been snatched up by then. So safety is a huge one. Not only safety of your belongings, but you know, actually feeling safe and comfortable. I'm looking so red. This lighting is making me look like a strawberry right now. Okay, next one is about the older generation. Now, a few differences that definitely stand out. First is that in fast food restaurants like McDonald's or KFC or Subway, you see so much of the older generation working in restaurants like this. Some of them literally look like 70, 80 years old, and I just think, wow, like why and how are they still working in places like this? Because in the UK, it's teenagers that work in McDonald's and in the F&B industry. You would never see an elderly man or woman working in those kind of places because they would have retired. So that was a big cultural shock because I was like, oh my god, like should they not be at home? Like why are they still working? Now, I think there's a couple of different reasons. I think one side of the story is that they still want to work. In Singapore, they encourage the older generation to keep working literally until they die, I believe. You know, they encourage them to keep working and stay active. On the other hand, I wonder if it's because they have no retirement money and they literally need to still work to eat and to live. So I think there's two different reasons that could come into play there. I would love to hear your guys' opinion on it. I personally don't like seeing it because I just think, like, you know, they're old enough, they've done their time, like they should be retiring now and relaxing. I don't like seeing them working in like McDonald's and things like that because I think that's what the younger generation should be doing. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. I know a lot of Singaporeans barely even notice it, but it's something that really stands out to me and my friends. Put queuing weirdly. Yes, now Singaporeans are like renowned for queuing, but they do queue in a peculiar way. So in the UK, it's all about who's been waiting there the longest, because that's the fairest way to do it, right? If I'm queuing for 10 minutes, someone comes along and joins the queue and gets served straight away, that's not fair because I've been queuing longer than them. But in Singapore, say you're at McDonald's and there's 3 different counters, people will queue for each counter. So depending on how fast the queue goes down, results in how fast you're going to be served. Whereas in the UK, we will step away from the 3 counters so that there's one formal queue between the 3 counters, and then whichever counter is free next, you go to. So everyone is queuing for the same amount of time and everyone gets served at an equal rate. Whereas in Singapore, you can be queuing for a long time and someone can just quickly come into the second counter and they'll be served straight away. So that really irritates me because I'm like, I've been waiting here longer. Okay, Singlish is a big one, but I've done so many videos about Singlish. Obviously, if you come to Singapore, that's probably one of the biggest culture shocks, is hearing Singlish for the first time, because you probably have no idea what anyone is saying. It's not only the Singlish, but it's the Singaporean accent as well. It can be very difficult to understand. And I think it takes time to do that. So that was probably one of the biggest culture shocks, especially when I started working in Singapore. Obsession with food. Now, the obsession is real in Singapore. Everyone is obsessed with food, and to an extent I can't really blame them, because with the incredible variety of food here, it's no wonder that Singaporeans are so obsessed with it. But it just makes me laugh how Singaporeans can have literally like an hour conversation about food. Now, back in the UK, we would never really talk about food. Like, you might say a flying comment about food, but there's no way that you would get into like a deep discussion about like fish and chips. Like, it just wouldn't happen. It would be like a 2-minute like, oh my god, did you try this fish and chips? They were so good, la la la, and that would be it. But we wouldn't talk about food to the extent that Singaporeans talk about food. I remember one time I was on the MRT, a couple next to me, we were literally having a discussion about like seafood for like 30 minutes straight, and I was just like, wow, like just talking about all these different restaurants. It's something that I find fascinating, that everyone is just so in love with food. Next is the topic of maids. Now, having a maid in Singapore is a very common thing, especially amongst expats. A lot of expats will have maids, so when they are at work, the maids will look after their children and clean their house and make their dinner, and the maids are like live-in maids, so they actually live with you in your house or your apartment. My thoughts on having a maid, it's a bit of a strange one. Back in the UK, I don't know anyone that had a maid or a cleaner or a helper. It's only something you would have if you're like middle class or upper class, but because having a maid here is so more affordable, I suppose, it's something that a lot of people have here. Not just expats, Singaporeans have maids as well. It's still so unusual to me, like the whole concept of having a maid. I think it's a bit bizarre. Okay, next I put strict laws. I've also touched on this before. There are a lot more strict laws put into place than there are in the UK, which at first I was a bit nervous about, because I thought I was going to get into trouble for everything. But although there are a few extreme laws, they're not necessarily always policed. Just make sure you're respectful and don't act like a lunatic in Singapore, and I'm sure you'll be fine. I mentioned this in the last video where I spoke about Singapore culture, but that is the emphasis I feel in this country on being smart and being successful. Now, I know that school life for a lot of Singaporeans is very stressful. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure put on children to succeed. So a cultural difference that I have noticed is that creativity is not really encouraged in Singapore. I think it's all very like academic, whereas in the UK, you know, we have a huge creative scene, so you don't necessarily have to be doing, you know, maths, science, become a doctor, that kind of thing. But in Singapore, there doesn't seem to be that emphasis on creativity just yet. I think it's getting better, but we're talking like an art scene. There's not really an emphasis on being artistic. It seems to be more academic. So that's something I've definitely noticed being here. And next is eating loudly. Now, in the UK, if you eat loudly, you are told off by your parents. They tell you to close your mouth when you eat, don't talk with your mouth or that kind of thing, because it's considered rude. But here in Singapore, you should just get used to everyone eating loudly. It's quite comical sometimes. Like, I have Singaporean friends, I'm just like, can you eat any louder? But I don't think they notice they're doing it, which I find quite funny. But yeah, it's not really considered rude here, but in the UK it would be considered rude, so it's just something funny that I noticed. Okay, another big thing is living with parents. When you hit maybe 18 or younger in the UK, you start to get antsy and you want to start thinking about leaving home and moving into your own place. But in Singapore, Singaporeans do not move out until they are married. People in their 20s and even into their 30s, maybe their 40s, if they're not married, they will still be living at home with their parents. I've spoken to a lot of Singaporeans about this to get their opinion, and I always think like the opinion is divided into, yes, I love living at home still, I love being with my parents, and no, all I want to do is move out and have my own independence. So I can understand both points of view. I think there's pros and cons. I know some people don't mind it at all, but I feel for the Singaporeans that really want to move out and have their own independence, because at the end of the day, that's part of growing up. I can also understand their frustration. Definitely a big cultural difference. I would love you guys to comment below and tell me your thoughts on the points that I have mentioned, and we can have a little chat about the cultural differences, because I think it's always such a fascinating topic to talk about. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you're not subscribed already, please do hit the big red subscribe button below, and also remember to turn on that notification bell so that you get a notification every time I upload, and then you can be the first one to comment on my video. As always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!